Good morning, everyone. The FDA has authorized Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use for children ages 5 to 11. Now more than 300 providers in Mississippi have signed up to give out these shots, with young children being some of the fastest spreaders of the disease. Columbus pediatrician Dr. Jacob Skiski says getting the vaccine approved for them is long overdue. Stephen Pempo has more on that.
The virus doesn't care of politics, okay? Virus is a virus and it's going to get you one way or the other, and the shot is the best protection you have.
With the FDA approving Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use in children ages 5 to 11, Children's Health Center pediatrician Dr. Jacob Skiski says they've ordered 300 more doses.
I wish it had been done earlier, before school got started, so we could have stopped the virus spread in the first place. Then we wouldn't have to have school closings now.
Columbus's Children's Health Center is one of the more than 300 providers across the state that has signed up to administer these shots. He says this age group in particular is one of the most rapid spreaders of COVID.
They fall down, they got dirty hands, they pass their cookies around, they pass their drink around, and if one's got it, they all got it.
And with the Delta variant more prevalent in children, Dr. Skiski says getting everyone vaccinated is the best way to stop more of these variants from developing.
New variants, it's coming down on the age group, and we're afraid the kids won't get, if we have any other variants, the kids could be as susceptible as the adults.
Pfizer has not seen any serious side effects in the more than 3,000 children they have observed, and Dr. Skiski says this vaccine is no different from those that have eradicated other diseases.
Chickenpox, rubella, rubeola, or the measles, tetanus, whooping cough. It was strictly medical, and as a result, we got that through, and actually Mississippi is one of the best immunized states for kids with these childhood diseases.
The pediatrician urges parents to put away their political ideologies and do what's best for their children.
It's a deadly virus. The best way to stop it is to get vaccinated.
In Columbus, Stephen Pimpo, WCBI News.
A vaccine appointment at the Children's Health Center. You can call their office. They're also holding COVID and flu vaccine walk-in clinics on November 12th. That will be from 1 to 5 p.m. Mississippi hospitals are sounding the alarm about staffing problems and pleading for help from the state. This is a perfect storm. Another COVID surge this summer prompted the state to bring in contract healthcare workers to fill those staffing gaps. While they were here, other nurses kept leaving to seek higher pay with travel positions, and now the contracts have ended. Courtney Ann Jackson has more on that.
We've been knowing a nursing shortage was coming. What we didn't know is that COVID was going to come on the horizon and blow it up. So now you have a hole right now to fill that you can't fill. There aren't enough people.
The state contracted nurses were a Band-Aid to a bigger problem, and the staffing gap has only grown while they were here. But what does that mean for you as a potential patient? King's Daughters Medical Center in Brookhaven says it could be noticeable.
Our nurse to patient ratios are going to go back up. You're going to have nurses taking a load of patients that they can't give the 110% to every patient because they just don't have the time in 12 hours to do it. You're going to have patients, your wait times in your ERs are going to go back up. They're going to skyrocket.
They say they'll have no choice but to close some of their beds now that the contract nurses are gone. Singing River Hospital System is losing 70 contract nurses.
Had to close an entire nursing unit in Ocean Springs Hospital, in Pascagoula Hospital, and in Gulfport, just because those MEMA nurses were leaving and we were dependent on them to keep those units open. I have an ICU that's been closed since last November, not because I don't need it and the patients in the community don't need it. It's strictly we don't have enough nurses to meet the need.
The governor says he's willing to continue conversations with legislative leaders about directing some of the federal funds to a retention program, but
I think focusing on workforce development, workforce training, on training more nurses, training more doctors, training more nurse practitioners, training more healthcare professionals will have a significantly greater long-term impact on the number of individuals that are trained to work in those fields.
Those in the field say,
I truly believe in education, but those nurses are 1 to 2 years out. This problem has got to be solved now. We don't have a year to 2 years to fix the problem.
Courtney Ann Jackson, WCBI News.
Now, the governor says none of those contracts will be re-upped, and he wouldn't give any solid time frame on when or if he'll call a special session, much less if it would include a nurse retention program. Well, the pandemic has put an extraordinary strain on healthcare workers. Many are exhausted and burned out, but in a suburb of Chicago, COVID's latest retreat is not only allowing a doctor to recharge, it's allowing him to get back on stage. Charlie DeMar has that story.
Daryl Wilson isn't just any doctor, he's a doc star. In the halls of Edward Hospital outside of Chicago, it seems just about everyone knows his name.
What's up, buddy?
He's the EMS medical director, and like so many others on the front lines, the pandemic has challenged him both physically and emotionally.
I mean, it's been 18 months of kind of running, and the engine's hot.
But Dr. Wilson never really unplugs. He prefers to plug in.
You guys enjoying Rampa so far?
In his free time, the white coat goes away, the hair comes down, and the doctor turns punk rocker. He's the lead singer for the Boll Weevils, a band of friends together since the 90s. They played at Riot Fest last month, the big 3-day music festival in Chicago. It was one of their first live shows since the start of the pandemic. His young daughter's right there with him. We spoke with Wilson days before the show. You excited to get back on stage?
Oh, God, yeah.
How will this performance maybe look different than other performances?
The energy's still going to be there. I'll be up on stage jumping around. But I mean, getting into the crowd's probably not going to happen.
Wilson is known for stage dives. That didn't happen at this show. After all, he's still a doctor, even in front of screaming fans. To enter, the venue required a negative COVID test or proof of vaccination.
This is a public health issue. So if you're not going to take public health seriously, then I wouldn't be a part of that at all.
Whether it's with his fans or his patients, he's happy to be the punk rock doc.
There are not many other people that do what I do, and that uniqueness, being that unicorn, is actually pretty cool.
Charlie DeMar, CBS News, Chicago.
All right, a little later on mid-morning, planting for the future. That story next. All right, we're back. Carbon dioxide, the main culprit for greenhouse gases, has been seeping into the air from some surprising places like peat bogs, a type of wetland where it has been contained harmlessly for thousands of years. Mark Phillips takes us into the Scottish Highlands to see another battleground in the fight to save the planet.
They're always uphill on the way to work.
Yeah,
seems so.
I get quite used to the...
Quite often, stories about climate change require trekking to some remote corner of the planet, usually to discover the latest worrying effect. But this climb up through the highlands of Scotland with conservationist Shayla Rao is in search of a solution, or at least part of one. Much of this landscape is covered in soaking wet peat, a kind of swamp of vegetation that has decomposed over thousands of years, and which, given the weather up here, never dries out. In terms of fighting climate change, that's important.
We're standing on a big carbon sink here. This is carbon that's in the ground and not in the air.
Exactly.
Peat, it turns out, is much better at sequestering carbon than even trees. Peat bogs make up just 3% of the Earth's landmass, but store 30% of all land-based carbon, twice as much as the world's forests.
So what happens is the vegetation is capturing carbon from the atmosphere, but the saturation of the water in the ground and how wet it is doesn't allow any carbon to be lost. It's kind of sealed up. So over time, more and more carbon is sequestered and stored in this habitat.
And it stays in it.
Yeah, it
because
stays
it's not exposed to the air, to oxygen, and can't.
Yeah, well, it stays in it until what we see here is happening.
What we see here is happening is vast areas of peat being lost. Some of it because increased rainfall is washing it away. Some because people have been harvesting peat from bogs for centuries to use as fuel. It'll burn if it's dried out. Some because it can be collected and used as fertilizer. And some because huge tracts of peat wetlands have been drained around the world to be used in agriculture.
Effectively, we're standing in the middle of the problem here. This was once peat up to the top, and now it's been eroded into this gully. Is that the problem?
Yeah, exactly, that's it. So historically, the peat would have filled this, but that's all been eroded away down the hillside, really, yeah.
Lately, as the value of peat as a carbon store has been recognized, people are trying to save it. A major Scottish project is using mechanical diggers to recover exposed areas of bog with wet moss to keep the peat under it from drying out and blowing away. The gullies where the peat is washing away are being made shallower and also lined with moss to slow the water flow down and hopefully stop the erosion. Stuart Brooks of the Scottish National Trust will be trying to convince others at the Glasgow Climate Conference just how important peat bog preservation is.
We find peatlands, wetlands and swamps all over the planet, about 180 countries. So in America, in North America, in South America, in the tropics, in Southeast Asia, and here in Northern Europe as well.
And a funny thing is happening to land values up here in these highlands.
We used to think countryside like this was almost worthless, nothing but windswept bogland. Now, though, companies are falling over themselves trying to buy up chunks of it because it's so valuable.
Companies like this Scottish brewery, which is offsetting its carbon footprint by buying up and restoring peatland for carbon credit. There's a boom going on in soggy real estate.
We made the decision to buy the land because it really was about us kind of taking full control of the process.
Can you sell non-sustainable beer these days?
You know, I think going forward you won't be able to.
Saving the planet, or trying to, one shovelful of moss at a time. Mark Phillips, CBS News.
America's giant sequoia trees, the largest trees on the planet, are being threatened by droughts and wildfires. Now researchers are working to ensure the tree's future before it's too late. Anthony Pura joined scientists on an environmental restoration project that was years in the making.
On California's Sierra Nevada mountains, scientists are on a mission to restore the area's past for the future. Unrecognizable in their small size, these tiny trees are young giant sequoias. Jim Clark is with Archangel Ancient Tree Archive, a group working to preserve the ancient trees.
When you have dry mountainsides with dry, dead standing timber, it's a tragedy waiting to happen.
They are planting 150 saplings on privately owned land in the mountain community of Sequoia Crest. A wildfire ripped through the region last year, scorching the landscape and killing many large sequoias.
The one thing that we all agree on is that this area needs help to regenerate.
But lost with each tree, future cones and seeds.
That's why we're here, is to help assist the trees that can no longer do what they have naturally done.
These 2-foot-tall trees were cloned from a 225-foot-tall sequoia called the waterfall tree. Researchers collected clippings from that tree 7 years ago before it was lost in a wildfire last year. The Archangel team nurtured the cloned saplings in a Michigan lab until they were ready to be planted in the California mountains. Scientists say the trees will have an undeniable environmental benefit.
They sequester carbon dioxide, and the bigger the tree, the more carbon is sequestered.
Saying it's important sequoias continue to survive and thrive.
That's why we're planting them, for your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren.
And we're hoping that in years to come, there will be a legacy left for future generations.
A legacy that will strengthen and grow with time. Anthony Pura, CBS News, Sequoia Crest, California.
The trees they planted on a GPS coordinate so they can be monitored over time. All right, when we come back, burnout on the job. Who is affected? We'll tell you next on Mid Morning. All right, we're back. A comprehensive study finds women in corporate America made strides at nearly every level of U.S. companies last year, but the pandemic continues to cause increasing burnout. And even after a year of focusing on racial diversity and inclusion, women of color still face more challenges and get less support. Elise Preston takes a look at women in the workplace.
Chicago media entrepreneur Olivia Mancuso is her own boss.
I get to decide what my labor is worth, and that is huge to me.
Mancuso left a mid-level management job this past March after feeling overworked, undercompensated, and stressed out. It even took a toll on her body.
I was losing clumps and clumps of hair. I just could not believe what I was seeing.
This year's Women in the Workplace report from McKinsey and Lean In found women are increasingly burned out, and more so than men. 1/3 said they considered leaving or downshifting their careers.
I think we should look at that as a bellwether for how women are feeling and the toll it's taking on them.
Report authors Alexis Krivkovich and Rachel Thomas say women have stepped up during the pandemic, particularly in leadership roles, but only 1/4 of companies are recognizing the extra effort.
The big risk for companies in this moment is that they unwind the progress they've gained on women in leadership and lose these extraordinary leaders when they need them most.
The study also found women of color are losing ground at every step in the corporate pipeline, and they continue to have a worse experience at work.
I've worked at places where I was the only Black woman.
Nikki Ivy consults tech startups. Ivy says she was passed over for a promotion at her previous job and endured frequent microaggressions.
I was repeatedly told that my demeanor was intimidating to people. I was speaking to them just the way I'm speaking to you right now.
And while a large majority of white employees now view themselves as allies of women of color, there's little follow through.
That gap between intent and action is something that companies really need to address.
Action that could improve the workplace for everyone. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
Say pandemic work from home flexibility shows companies are capable of pivoting quickly. Well, facial recognition by Facebook is on its way out.
It looks like the feature is already phasing out. Normally, while uploading a photo, the app would immediately recognize subjects in the frame. But this afternoon, nothing. Same thing for group photo uploading using the desktop app. 27 faces and not a single recommendation for tagging. On a blog post titled, "An Update on Our Use of Face Recognition," the company said, quote, "We need to weigh the positive use cases for facial recognition against growing societal concerns, especially as regulators have yet to provide clear rules."
So this is a really big thing that they're doing and then suddenly shutting down.
CNET editor Ian Scherr says the company has been under tremendous pressure ever since the 2016 Cambridge Analytica scandal, the 2019 fine of $5 billion from the FTC for privacy violations that allege Facebook misrepresented users' ability to control the use of facial recognition technology, and this year's $650 million settlement for Facebook users in Illinois for using photo face tagging without permission.
These things have been going on for quite a while, and it's pretty clear at this point that Facebook has just decided it's no longer worth fighting without having a legal framework that tells them it's okay to run it.
It will take some time for the law to catch up with the technology. Scherr says it sounds like Facebook will leave the door open for future use.
So there are benefits to this type of stuff. The problem is that there's a lot of privacy concerns as well, and Facebook very clearly has not solved those issues, which is why it's backing away.
You're not going to miss it.
Not going to miss it. Not going to miss it.
David Ma, a lecturer at San Jose State, says good riddance to facial recognition. He is weaning himself off Facebook.
The less information that Facebook gets and sort of wants to grab from us, I think it's fine. And also, just as a large corporation, I'm not super aligned with all of their, business decisions. I think some of it's not super ethical.
All right, just ahead, Get Your Affairs in Order. We'll show you how next on Mid-Morning. All right, we're back. A Swedish cleaning fad is gaining steam around the world. It's designed for people getting up in years and promotes sorting through a lifetime of possessions to save your family from a lifetime of clutter. Ian Lee has that story from London.
84-year-old Lena Sundgren and her friend Christina are doing some housework. But it's a type that might raise an eyebrow, known in Sweden as duststädning, or death cleaning.
It gives a kind of calm.
By glow of candlelight, the two sift through Lena's belongings, deciding what's important and what needs to go.
The feeling of getting rid of them is a relief.
That relief is also meant for her family.
I have done my best to relieve my relatives from deciding what to do with all those things.
The tradition gained a cult following from author Margareta Magnusson.
My blouses.
She introduced the concept with her book, The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning.
So when you are this old, it takes you back to moments you
like to remember maybe. And if you don't, just throw it away.
It's a twist on Marie Kondo's approach to a tidy home.
Hello, I'm Maria Kondo.
The Japanese celebrity got the world keeping only items that bring them joy.
Just get rid of it.
While we can't live forever,
Well, I'm going to die. Well, that's it.
at least with death cleaning, we can make life easier for those left behind. Ian Lee, CBS News.
Now, death cleaning isn't meant to be a one-off process. People are encouraged to take their time with it and to share the experience with others. And we will be right back to wrap things up. All right, stay connected with us. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you back here next time.